But from chapter 4, the last little topic at the end of the chapter, there's a brief paragraph on big data. All right, so I just want to make sure that I really just want you to make sure that you understand the difference between big data and the stuff that we've talked about before, as that may be on the test, okay? So, who has their book with them? Just like Tony does. Hey, Tony. Tony, could you hook us up with the definition of big data per the vocabulary list at the end of the chapter?
I had it.
Isaac's already beat you to it, dude. You just lost your name on the board, Tony. All right. I mean, I'm telling you, Tony Hawk would not have been that slow. Okay. So, what you got, Isaac? What you got, buddy?
All right. Sets of data that are larger than a consumer software application that can't handle.
All right. So, do you guys hear that? Big data. It's data larger than a consumer software application can handle. Right? You're not going to be able to process this data at home. You're not going to be able to purchase any of the database tools that are available to you as a consumer to be able to manage this stuff. And so it's we're talking terabytes and terabytes and terabytes of data. I'm probably not using a big enough prefix, right? And so there are companies that are dedicated to managing this sort of stuff, and they're keeping track of everything. You know, we've talked about that, I guess, at the beginning of this, the way that they target ads. So they're keeping track. Google's keeping track, and Yahoo's keeping track, and whoever else is keeping track of what you're searching, so the next time you're on there, they can target you with that particular ad. I was looking for new. We go skiing or snowboarding usually every year, and I was looking for new thermal underwear. So someone had sent me like some kind of discount on some site I'd never heard of. I clicked on it and went to look at the long johns, and then I got like blasted with long john advertisements from there on out, right? So they're paying attention to everything that you do, and so that they can target those search queries and try to sell you products. I mean, that's really what's behind it, right? They're seeking to make money off of you. And so big data helps these companies make those types of educated decisions. I know just before just before I left Turner, they were getting ready to release HBO Max, right? And so they were there was a big push to try to gather information for how people were using the various websites and all that sort of stuff. And I mean, it was just tons of data, right? As they're trying to figure out what's the price point that what can we charge for this, and people are probably going to pay. How much, are people watching the various shows on the different networks that we're going to show on HBO Max? I mean, there was so much information that they were trying to assimilate, put together, and then and so they could target the correct audience, and they could sell it for as much as possible, right? People would actually buy it. And so that's the kind of stuff that big data companies are working with, and usually these large corporations, I mean, they will have departments that are dedicated to managing that type of stuff. But this is really, I just want to talk about it briefly, right? We spend most of our time on spreadsheets and databases. I just want you to know that that's out there and be aware of that, so that if you see that definition on a test, you'll know what it means. All right, so any questions about that before we move on to security? All right, chapter 5. Chapter 5 is security. Has anybody in here had their information stolen that you know of? Yes?
My email.
Your email? Okay. Probably a lot of us get spam on our email, right? Some email platforms do a better job of managing that than others. Sometimes it may just be sort of random, but a lot of times it's because somewhere your information was on a list that, maybe some hacker got a hold of, or a company. It could have been that just the company sold that information. But people have their information stolen every day. Sometimes it's just unwise choices that we make as we're surfing online, right? That exposes our data and makes us easy prey for people that are trying to get that. But other times there are these huge data breaches, right? For large companies, or even like branches of government for countries, where that information is exposed, and people may take it, may steal it, and then kind of hold it ransom. And the company or the country has to pay so much to get their information back. They may just use it to do something malicious, like try to access your bank account or something like that. Or it could be as simple as, we're going to send you spam, email that you don't want. But anyway, these data breaches happen all the time, and it's becoming increasingly a problem, costing companies millions and sometimes billions of dollars. So what your assignment is going to be for this week is going to be related to data breaches. All right, and so I want you guys to do research on your own about some major data breach that happened. I'm not going to tell you what to pick. You just research it and figure out what you want to zero in on, and you're going to write me an essay on that data breach. And we're probably not going to have time to do that next week. Maybe we will. But I'm going to give you an opportunity to kind of share what you find. So if someone finds something that's particularly interesting that you want to share with the class, then we'll open it up for discussion once we are able to consider those essays. But anyway, I'll put that assignment online, but I just wanted to kind of give you a heads up. A study done at Vanderbilt University in 2018 suggested that over 2,000 deaths a year happen in the United States due to cyber attacks or data breaches, right? And so, well, mainly cyber attacks. So if something happens where a system goes down, or the information there is faulty, or something like that. And so not only can these data breaches cost money, they can actually cause loss of life. And Vanderbilt's like, that's a minimum. They're like a minimum of 2,000 deaths. It may be way more than that, where the information that maybe healthcare workers were using led them to make some sort of mistake that caused someone to die. Yes?
I forgot what it was or what the company was, but it was like over the 4th of July a year or two ago, this entire company went and they like hacked the company and their all little files. I think it was Ubisoft maybe, or I forget what it was. And it was over 4th of July, and the plan for that was that so all the guys would be out of the department, no one would be there since the weekend, and they hacked them and it ended up costing them like 10 million. It may have been Microsoft, I'm not sure.
Okay.
But it costed them like so much money to go and repair it, since they had to send in extra guys and how much they
Right.
and everything.
Yeah. So these are big. It's a big deal for companies, and again, it's one of those things that companies have. The larger companies are going to have big departments that are dedicated to keeping their information safe, right? So that's what this chapter is about. It's about the possibility of there being security issues and how we might protect ourselves against that. So let's talk about let's talk about the term hackers. Now, when you hear the term hackers, is that something that you think about like an honest profession when you think of hackers, or is that something that you're kind of like, or is it? Does anybody in here consider himself or herself to be a hacker?
That's my age.
I just need to know who I'm watching.
So I think Aiden ran for this one.
Huh?
I think it's gotta be Aiden.
Gotta be Aiden? I don't know. Isaiah was kind of grinning, so I don't know. I might have to keep my eye on Isaiah. So hackers can be good and they can be bad, right? So let's just define what the term hacker means. A hacker is any skilled user of technology who uses their talents to solve problems. All right, so that would be a basic definition of a hacker. So unfortunately for some hackers, the problem that they're trying to solve is how can I get all of your money, right? So that's not the kind of hacker that we want to have to deal with. But there are some that are actually trying to do something good. And so the ones that are kind of driven by malicious intent, those are called black hats. So they're seeking to wreak havoc and cause problems. But then we also have white hats. Not white hates, white hats. And the white hats are the guys that companies are hiring to try and hack their systems, to try and expose problems, right? So they can prevent issues from happening, so that they can be aware of security loopholes that may be there before they become a problem. All right, yes.
So you can buy this thing for gaming wise, and you plug it into your system, you plug it into your controller, and you can download hacks for your system and games. Would you consider that to be a hack? And it's available for the consumer. You basically go and you plug it into your controller and download hacks, and you can go play games with aim assist, aimbot, and it's a big problem. Would you consider it is like available to consumers? Would you consider those people to be like a hack?
So it's allowing you to play games that you're supposed to have to pay for?
No, it's like, say like Call of Duty, a shooter game, you have that thing plugged in, you have like wall hacks so you can see where people are. You have
Right.
It's giving you an unfair advantage.
It's giving you.
Yeah. I see what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, I understand why they're called hacks, right? Because the game's it's now, you're able to do something that the game's not intending for you to be able to do, right? It's not really costing the game, it's not costing anybody any money, and it's not necessarily doing it any harm. It's just giving. Now, I guess if it was some kind of competition where you were able to make money off of it, then yeah, that would be that would be hacking in a malicious way.
It
But
does cost companies money because, like, if your game is flooded with such, like, I think CS:GO used to be, people will just leave there.
where people leave, like if it's an online game or whatever. Yeah, so there could be harm in that way. So
All you have to do is just buy that device. You don't have to do any coding or anything. You just buy it and plug it in.
you just buy it and it just works. Yeah. So that's interesting. It's interesting that if it is causing issues with games, with online games and all, that it would be legal. And I'm sure that there are probably people fighting against that say, that should be outlawed or whatever, So some of these things you don't even realize that they are problems until somebody does it, and then it's like, oh, everybody left my online gaming system because, it was no longer fair. So you kind of maybe have to take that stuff on a case-by-case basis to see, But the idea here, has anybody ever seen the movie Catch Me If You Can? Yeah? I've only seen an edited copy of it, so I don't know that it's a movie that I can recommend. I think there was some stuff in it that I probably wouldn't be okay with. But back when, I think this company's, it's been sued by some of the movie companies, so they're not able to do what they were doing. But used to, there was a company called, I don't know, Clean Films or something like that. And you could order that particular DVD, and they would send you a physical copy of the DVD, but it was all like scratched up, so you couldn't play that one. But then they had a copy that was edited, right, that took out like the sexual stuff and profanity and that type of stuff. And so anyway, I watched a copy of it like that, and this was based on a true story. And the guy, like, he posed as an airline pilot and was actually getting paychecks from Eastern Airlines. He posed as a doctor here in Atlanta and was actually getting paid by, I think it was Emory, was actually getting paid by them, even though he never actually like operated on anybody or anything like that, but he was a surgeon in their system and was getting paychecks based on that. And so the reason I bring that up is because he ends up getting caught by the FBI. He was a young guy. I mean, he was like, I think when he first started doing this stuff, he was probably around some of your ages. But when the FBI caught him, he ended up being hired to try and prevent other people from the reason the FBI was after him is because he was forging checks, and so that's kind of why they were tracking him down, and so they helped him. He helped them expose other forgeries and things like that. So it's kind of the idea with the black hats and the white hats, right? He was like a sort of a black hat to start with, but then became a white hat once he was out of prison. But just something to be aware of. Hackers, it can be a good term. There are decent hackers that are actually making a living off of that, and companies hire them to do that. But then there are others that are just trying to cause problems, which are the black hats. All right, what are some of the ways that hackers seek to do harm? Well, they install malware. One of the things that they do is they try to install malware on the systems. And what is malware? Yes?
Malicious software?
Malicious software, exactly. I couldn't have said it better myself. Malicious, there's the mal. Software, there's the where, right? So that's where we get that term from. Malicious software. Sorry, Hudson, I know you said some stuff. Isaiah said some stuff. I'm not sure who else. The rest of you guys are going to impress me again, all right? But let's talk about some different types of malware. that hackers might have put together that they're trying to get onto your system or company systems, company networks, things like that. What's an obvious one that comes to mind? Viruses, right? I'm glad you said that because that was the first one on my list. So definitely add you to the board for that. All right, so viruses. What's a virus? A virus, I'm going to write this a little bit higher and try to avoid the jingle bells there. I'll just write it over here. Viruses, they infects other programs. It's kind of like catching a virus or cold, right? The other programs are infected, and it's propagated like that, and usually spreads by copying itself repeatedly. You might open an email from somebody that maybe it was a suspicious email and you opened it up anyway, or maybe they kind of spoofed you. You thought it was from someone else and it wasn't. But you might open an attachment in an email. That might be a way that you get a virus on your system, or plug it in an infected USB drive or something like that. Antivirus software is a good way to combat this, right? Does everybody have antivirus software running? No? Are you anti-antivirus software? Anti-antivirus? Why do you not have antivirus software running on your machine?
I just use Windows Defender and hope that it's good enough. And
Well, I mean, Windows Defender is kind of you're using that as your antivirus program, right?
Yeah.
So that's built in, one that you can use. That's fine. I would just recommend at least having something, right? I mean, the only downside to antivirus programs is that sometimes it can cause your system to run slow. So usually whatever I install, I'm going into the settings and trying to tweak that and telling it I don't want it to run, on a scheduled time. I want to be able to either kick it off myself or make sure it's only running when I'm not doing anything else on the system. But, definitely beneficial when it comes to stopping viruses and catching them before they do too much damage. Since it's this idea of it's repeatedly copying itself, it can catch it before it does too much damage and try to repair that. All right, so those are viruses. What about worms? Anybody ever heard that term? Yeah? So these are standalone pieces of malware that don't need a computer application as a host, unlike viruses. Right? So they differ from viruses in that sense. They don't need to infect an existing program or application, which functions as the host that carries that virus onto other things, right? They're kind of standalone, working all by themselves. I can't help, I always think about, is anybody in here Tolkien fan? Got any Lord of the Rings, Hobbit fans in here? A few of you guys? Okay. I also am a Tolkien nerd, so welcome. Yeah, are you a nerd too?
No, I was gonna say.
You're a nerd, dude. Don't
I
try
am
to deny it.
not. Just not talking here. Are you saying movies or the book?
I was actually going to talk about movies. I was thinking about the Hobbit, which I don't really care for the Hobbit movies, the series, because they just try to do too much. They try to get 3 films out of it. They could have done a better job with less. But there's a scene with the trolls. Have you guys seen that? And where Bilbo's trying to convince them they don't need to be eaten. He's like, because they got worms in their tubes. And then the trolls are like, what? Worms? And so that's what I think about every time I hear this. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm sorry. All right, so they also copy themselves though. They also usually copy themselves repeatedly. Seek to do damage that way. But don't need, unlike viruses, but don't need human interaction to do so. So this one requires human interaction for the viruses, right? Like I said, you plugged in that infected USB drive, or you clicked on that suspicious link in that email or whatever, and downloaded the virus that way. But worms are a little more capable. They just kind of get on the network and then start making their way into various systems and doing damage. Questions about the difference between viruses and worms? Pretty similar, but just make sure you understand one requires a host, the other one doesn't. One requires human interaction, the other one doesn't. Something else they mentioned in the book are logic bombs. Has anybody heard of that before? I was familiar with the idea, but I hadn't heard that term before. That was kind of a new, I didn't really have a name for it, so now I guess I know what the name is for it. But these are pieces of code that don't go off and do damage until certain conditions are met. So it's kind of like they have a tripwire, right? It's like once the wire is tripped, then the process begins, and the damage it attempts to do whatever damage that it's trying to do. But those conditions have to be met first. So maybe a certain series of events happen, something that you do on your machine that kind of causes it to actually happen. It's been sitting there ready to run at any moment, but it was only when you did those particular series of events that it was kicked off. Or maybe it hits a particular time, right? So a particular date, we're gonna, the code, the machine's already infected, you don't realize it, but then when that date happens, then it's kicked off. And so it runs fine for a while, but when those conditions are met, then the logic bombs go off. I thought of something, but I can't remember what it was. What's I gonna say? I looked at one of you guys, and it's like, I need to say that. What's on your shirt? Oh, the Mandalorian. Okay, got it. Is there a second season of that?
It's already, they're working on the third season.
The second season's already been released?
Yeah,
we already watched
they're releasing the.
Oh, it's the third season I haven't seen.
They're releasing Boba Fett this month.
Oh, really? Okay. Interesting. All right, Trojan horse.
Someone's calling you, by the way.
All right. Who does it say it is?
I think it's Nana.
Hilton.
Oh, it's Hilton. Yes, they've called me like every day for the past 3 days. They want me to rent a hotel room somewhere. Trojan horse. You guys familiar with that term? What's the story with the Trojan horse?
They're like, yo, let's go to the city. They're like, they're kind of smart and gonna just let us walk in there because they have this thing called a wall.
Yeah?
We're gonna build this fort and we're gonna hide inside it. We're gonna gift it to them. And then surprise, surprise, they have this festival. And they're all like tired because they've been up all day.
Right?
And then while they're sleeping, we just go and say, hey, we're here. It's ours now.
All right. So the idea was this big wooden horse. What was that? It was in the Iliad. Is that what it was in? Right. It was the Odyssey.
It was referenced. It was referenced.
Okay. So
just read a short version.
one of Homer's stories, right? So yeah, the wooden horse filled with soldiers, given as a gift. You think, okay, well they're submitting to us and they're giving us gifts. You let them in the city gate. and then under cover of night, they sneak out of the horse and attack the city, right? So that's kind of the way, that's the idea with the Trojan horse. And that's exactly the way it works. There's no wooden horse, right? But that's similar to the way it works in the software world. This is malware delivered under the guise of being something innocent. So maybe they want to give you something, you've won something, right? Or maybe it's a free app to do something that you've been wanting to be able to do. So it could be in a free app you download. Maybe in an advertisement, somehow embedded in some, you looked at some ad, and you're like, oh yeah, that's a good deal, I'm interested in that. You click on it. Maybe a game, right? You get something on your system that you think is useful or going to be fun, and the result is that you download an application that, once installed, provides a backdoor. I'm going to underline that, because that's one of our vocabulary words. Provides a backdoor once installed, which allows someone external to your system to access it. Right? You let somebody in that you didn't realize you'd let in. You open up this back door that grants someone access to your system. So that's the way that Trojan horses work. I guess maybe I could add to access it without your permission. All right? And then finally, the last, as far as malware goes, the last definition that we want to consider here is a botnet. So one way that hackers try to cause issues is through a DDoS attack. Does anybody know what that stands for? DDoS?
Something denial of service.
Yeah. So distributed denial of service. Distributed denial of service attack. And so with the denial of service attack, the idea is, a system is flooded with fake requests so that when the real requests are made to that system, the system's not available, right? Access is denied or service is denied. It could be a website that got brought down because a bunch of bogus requests were made to the website. Maybe it was some kind of streaming event, some live streaming event, right? And so a hacker floods the request for that particular stream, and now it's unavailable when the real customers are trying to view that stream, something like that. And so one way that the goal with this type of stuff is not really to try and steal information like we have with some of the other scenarios, but it's just to make the system unusable, right? And so in order to carry out these attacks, you can't just have you can't have 20 guys in a garage that are going, okay, we're going to all hit this website at the same time, right? That wouldn't be sufficient to bring a major website down. But what they instead will do is they will deliver these internet robots. So hackers may deploy a large network of internet robots, called bots for short. Known, and when you have this whole network known as a botnet, to carry out such attacks. So, bots are often delivered to systems via the Trojan horse. Right? So you downloaded some piece of software that seems to be legit, it's doing whatever you downloaded it for, or some game that, hey, it's fun and mindless, and you happily spend 8 hours a day, 7 days a week. I hope none of you guys do that. Playing that game or whatever. But what happened is when you downloaded that app and installed it on your system, it included this bot that now somebody external to your phone or to your computer or whatever can now send instructions at a particular time and create this coordinated attack against some website or whatever type of service to hopefully cause this denial of service, right? To bring that system down. And so that's the way that it works. They create a botnet like that by installing these bots on various systems so they can coordinate the attacks. All right, any questions about this stuff that's all sort of under the header of malware? No? You guys are kind of quiet today. I've been doing way too much talking.
It's not near or Preston, so we're kind of.
Is that what it is? Aiden's like, okay. Yeah. All right. You're being missed, Aiden. Am I still recording?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, cool. All right.
Hey, do I get extra points since we brought you coffee?
Ooh.
No, I mean that would encourage bribery in the class, right? And that can't be tolerated.
Of course.
I mean, no, that's not allowed. All right, so let's talk about fishing. Who in here likes to fish? Oh, we got some fishermen back there, just sort of. Right, that kind of looks like a fish flopping on the bank, right? So we got a back row of fishermen. None of you guys up front?
I like
A little
to eat
fishing?
fish.
Or okay, huh?
I like to eat fish.
You eat the fish, okay? So you enjoy the results of the fishing, but don't necessarily participate in the event itself. Okay. So how do you guys fish? Those of you that are fishermen that do it regularly, what type of fish do you fish for?
Bass.
Bass? Okay. So freshwater fishing, or there's saltwater bass too? Whiting, okay.
Whatever I can catch.
Where do you fish?
Yes, everywhere.
Everywhere?
Everywhere I know.
Okay. Sounds like my oldest son. Like if there's water, he wants to try to fish in that water.
I fished it out of my creek once, and I caught 2 fish and a crawfish.
And a crawfish.
I swear I was in a dream because then I was walking back and I saw an owl in the middle of the day, 5 feet away. It was a really weird day.
It sounds like a weird day. Are you sure you were awake?
I think I was. So I don't want to wake up.
All right.
Were you sure?
So why am I asking you about fishing? Because we want to talk about
Fishing for data?
this type of fishing, right? And it's related to this type of fishing, right? In the sense that, with fishing, there's some type of bait that you have where you're trying to catch the fish, right? So, what do you guys use for bait when you're fishing? Worms, okay. Like live worms, earthworms?
Yes.
Okay, yep.
Squid.
Shrimp, yep. Squid?
Squid. When you're in the ocean, squid.
Okay, all right. How about anybody use any like the little rubber lures or anything?
Crickets?
Crickets? Okay, for bass? Okay. Gotcha. So with phishing, it's the same kind of idea, right? A user is presented some bait. With the goal of getting them to enter personal information, such as usernames, passwords, right, credit card info, anything like that. Or in some cases, it may be as simple as your name, address, and birth date, or something like that, right, etc. So let me show, let's see what we got here. All right, so I'm on the IBM website, and I go to that website, and I'm maybe clicking around through here, trying to learn some stuff, scrolling up and down. That's just the survey there. I don't know how. Close. Here we go. Close that. Maybe want to, and I can click around and go to different places, just checking out various things on the website, right? And I notice as I'm going through the website that, oh, I can get on their email list and they're giving away $10,000, right? So I click on this, and it takes me to this page here. Welcome to the sweepstakes. Enter your first name, last name, address, mother's maiden name, birthday, credit card number, social security number. Click here to ruin your life. Did you guys know this was on IBM's website?
Let's go.
So I didn't have long enough to like make this very pretty. I could have made it more professional looking, right? So what this is here, this is just a simple trick with HTML where I'm using an iframe to insert another web page inside my web page, right? So if I can spam you with an email, if I can send that out to a bunch of people and say, hey, visit IBM to enter the contest or whatever, I could actually take them to a site like this where it's legit the IBM website here, but it's actually inside my web page. So if I look at the URL up here, this is just on my local system iframe sample that I created, but this is truly the IBM website. So I could click all around in here, and you're like, oh, this completely looks legit, but this outside part here is not legit. That's my stuff, right? So this is how phishing might work. So if you get an email and you click on the link, and you could even have stuff, like I said, that looks like it's like really, truly that company's stuff, but it's got some frame around it or something. Somehow they've embedded something in the page. Maybe a pop-up window comes up that's not really theirs, and you click on it, and boom, you're giving someone else your information instead of IBM your information. So that's kind of the way phishing works, right? It's that idea that there was some bait. The bait here was you could win $10,000, and so you enter in the information, and now I've got you. And I can't believe you gave me your credit card number and your social security number. What were you thinking, Caden? What were you thinking? Come on, you got to be smarter than that. But that's the way that phishing works. All right. So there's phishing like that. That's kind of a general sense, right? Probably send it out to a bunch of people. Who doesn't want to win $10,000, right? So they click on the link. Yes.
There was a funny ad going around back when Fortnite was really popular for little kids, and there was this dude going, "We need your help to save John Wick." And it was somebody from like Tilted Towers. He goes, "Please send me your mom's credit card, first number on the back, 3 numbers on the."
So walk them through
It was
it.
so funny, yeah. But he was like, "John Wick needs your help," and it was targeted to little kids.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, even if you only get a handful of people, that give you the information, that's still enough information to do some serious damage to somebody, right?
I checked the class, but it was so obvious, but some people probably actually did it.
Somebody probably did it, right? So there's phishing, and then there's also what we call spear phishing. So with spear phishing, this is targeted phishing. Where some pre-existing knowledge about an individual or group is used to make the bait more appealing, right? Or just more legit, right? This came from CVS. I have an account with CVS, and so this must be for real, and I'm going to click on the links and do what they're asking me to do, right? This is the kind of stuff, especially like elderly people, right? They get taken advantage of all the time. I got this email, and it must be real, and it's telling me if I don't respond right now, they're going to close my account, or they're going to charge me this. I kept getting some sort of spam email that was saying, thank you for your PayPal payment of $500 something for renewing Norton antivirus, you know? And I'm quite sure that if I called the number that was on there, if you think this is an error, call this number or whatever, you know, if I'd reached out, they would have wanted account number information. They would have wanted some sort of personal information so that they could access my stuff. And they're counting on the fact that one, that I use Norton antivirus, which I don't, and two, that I have a PayPal account, right? So maybe that came from, I do have a PayPal account, maybe that came from some kind of data breach where they knew I had a PayPal account, so they're able to target my email, right, do some spear phishing, knowing I've got this pre-existing knowledge of you. I know you have a PayPal account, so at least that portion of it, we know that you're gonna think this may be legit because you actually have an account with them, right? Yes?
And your like a virus end up on your system, like on your phone if you call a number? Like
Not from calling.
Okay.
Yeah, not from calling. But what they do is they say, yeah, oh, you got to verify this, you know, give us your account number or something, or give us your username and password, right? Anything that they can do to try to access your personal information. When my wife and I first got married, we got an ambulance bill. I mean, we had been only married for just a couple months, and we got an ambulance bill that had a name similar to mine on it. And the ambulance bill, but it was like a different middle name. I think it was James Walker, but it maybe had a different middle initial. And so my wife calls, she's like, we haven't used an ambulance service. And she calls them, and the ambulance service said, well, in order to verify that it's not your husband, can we get his social security number? We'll check it against our records. My wife gave them my social security number. You know, this was back in 1993, so it was when these scams weren't as prevalent as they are now. But we got another statement in the mail just a couple of weeks later that listed the social security number that this account was associated with. The name was updated to match my name, and the social security number was updated to match my social security number. So then I had to get lawyers involved and say, hey, if you don't retract this, then we're going to pursue this to the fullest extent of the law or whatever, and they backed off. But that's the kind of the way the phishing stuff works, right? They give you some situation. A lot of times it's a problem that you think you have to correct. Well, in order to confirm that, give me your account number or whatever. They're just trying to fish information from you so that they can get access to your data. So be careful of that, all right? What's some ways that you could protect yourself against phishing? Anybody know? Anybody got any suggestions there?
Don't give out information.
Don't give out information. Yep.
Verify.
Right. Make sure that you call them and give them the information, or you go to their website so that you can verify that it's legit. Yep.
Yeah, verify the URL is what I was gonna say. Make sure
The URL. That's a biggie, right? So a lot of times, like this, this one. If I was really going to do this and try to make you think that this was an IBM website, maybe I would buy the domain name 10,000contest.com, right? And so if I buy that domain name, I'd have to pick some domain name that's going to be available, something kind of weird, right? That's not going to be used much or whatever. But let's just say I purchased 10,000. I'll just say 10,000win.com. All right? This is what my contest was. You win $10,000. Well, if I purchase that domain, I can put any subdomain. I can use any subdomain associated with that. So I can create a subdomain That's ibm.10000win.com. And so you click on the link and it's got IBM in the URL and you're thinking, well, this must be legit IBM stuff, right? But this is the portion, you got to make sure that this is the portion of the URL that you're looking at. Look at the domain name. There's not a way for them to spoof that, all right? So if this is an IBM related contest, I'm looking for something that says IBM.com in the end. I get emails from Starbucks because I have does anyone not have an account with Starbucks? Is there anybody not here is not a coffee fan? You guys don't? I feel sorry for you. I'm sorry. Okay? Moment of silence for those guys. Okay. So, but they do these contests periodically, and when you go to the contest, it redirects you to this page and wants you to enter in there your username and password credentials in order to play the game. And I'm always checking, when it redirects me to that, I always check, does this end in starbucks.com? Otherwise, I'm not going to give them my username and password. And I mean, all it takes is just for a second for you not to pay attention to that, enter that in, and then you click login, and they could then redirect you to the Starbucks page and log you in behind the scenes, and you think that you just logged into the Starbucks site when really you just gave them your information. So check your URLs. Make sure that your domain name is a valid company name. That's a big one. Another way that you can protect yourself, this isn't necessarily just a phishing thing, but just protect yourself in general, is with the passwords that you use. Please tell me that you don't use the same password for every site that you go to. Never ever do that. All right? Make sure you're using different passwords, because you think about it, you get slack, right? You've got some password that you use to log into your banking account, and I just went on there to, I don't know, I wanted to sign up for this contest or whatever, and it's requiring me to create an account, right? Or my NVIDIA card, right? I wanted to update my drivers, but it's requiring me to create an NVIDIA account, and so I create that, use the same password, and now NVIDIA gets hacked, and because they have my password from that, they now have my password to my banking account. So use different passwords, right? That's one way to protect yourself. Another way is use strong passwords. So what would be a strong password?
Multiple letters, letters, numbers,
Completely random stuff.
you can keep it different and all that.
So what he says in the book is that what's the biggest factor with that is the length of your password. The longer you make your password, the harder it is for somebody to use a computer to crack that password. And use stuff that's not related, right? So like if you're going to use a phrase that's readable, say, if Konos classroom is in my password name, but say Konos Cal classroom. Put something totally random and unrelated to it. I always, I think to me, numbers and capital letters versus lowercase letters and symbols are useful ways also to kind of make it a little harder to guess. But the reality is computers are the ones that are guessing this stuff, and so it's just as easy for a computer to use a 0 instead of an O to check that out. So it's the safer thing is to make it as long as possible and try to make it words that are unrelated. Does anybody use any particular system for storing their passwords?
LastPass.
You use what's it called?
LastPass.
LastPass. So there are services out there for that. Yeah.
Apple has their own incorporated password saver.
Yeah.
I've noticed that.
Right. And I think maybe Samsung does too. I've seen that. I'm still wary of those, and so because for me, if they hack that, now they've got all of my stuff, right? If I've been storing my passwords in there, that's just me, right? There's got to be some way to. Obviously, they're going to decrypt it when they store it. We're going to talk about encryption, I'm sure, at some point in this chapter, and then I've got to have the key to be able to decrypt the information. But yeah, that just makes me nervous. So. Just use different passwords. Don't use the same password. Try to use strong passwords and figure out some system that works for you. Don't write it down on a piece of paper. Don't leave it around where it's easy for someone to find. And here's my last piece of advice. Don't carry your Social Security card around in your wallet or your pocketbook. My wife did that, and her purse was stolen, and they got access to our bank account. They have her social security number, and so we have to do special things when we file taxes every year. So keep your social security card separate from your stuff. I would recommend storing that safely at home. Huh? Yes, thanks. Exactly. Yeah. All right. So, all right. You guys have a good day. Like I said, there's an essay due next week. I will post that online what you're required to do for that, and we will have our final test for the year in class next week. It'll be over chapter 50.
Is last week the next or last?
Last week is next. Next week is the last week. Yep. All right. See you guys.